back to Monster Minis. A friend of mine asked me to paint his D&D party for him, and I was really excited to do it, just because I don't normally paint fantasy miniatures, and as a painter, it's always fun to stretch your legs and try something a little different. I'm going to get started by priming these guys in Ammo's one-shot black, and then coming over with a Zenithal prime with one-shot white. The Halfling is one of the smallest miniatures I've ever painted. There just wasn't, and there wasn't a lot of detail to pick out on him either. So I had to decide what was going to be the feature of this Halfling Ranger, and so I decided that the cloak, I would make the cloak as interesting as I could. So I'm going to be using Ammo's Russian modulation set, tinted with a little bit of yellow. This ends up not doing what I want. You'll see in later steps I come in and make adjustments to this. But I did want to try to do as much as I could in airbrush modulation on this cloak to make it look as cool as possible, since this is going to be the feature of this mini on the table. I didn't want to go super heavy with the colors on the Ranger, so I got the wet palette out and came in to just do a nice brown tunic and pants and boots on him, since his feature was going to be his cloak. I have to admit, I had to look at some reference photos of some Mastifs to figure out how to paint one. I don't know if I've ever painted a dog before. So I decided to go with Ammo's burnt brown red as the base coat. Build that up with Ammo's red leather, and then come in at the top with Ammo's burnt cinnamon as the final highlight. As always, I left a little bit of the previous color in the pot and then brought in the highlight color so that it would blend nicely. It was interesting with the Mastif because I wanted to try to make sure that his fur was enough of an interesting color, because his saddle and his accessories were all going to be leather, and as much as I love a brown on brown model, I had to make sure that his fur was interesting enough that there was enough contrast that it didn't clash with the leather. Because I wanted to do a lot of different colors on the Bard, I decided to go ahead and just glaze in and brush paint this model. Rather than going in and doing anything with the airbrush, I didn't want to pollute any of the other pieces of the model that I wanted to paint with different colors. This satyr is a bard that has been cursed with old age. This was a pretty fun challenge, that we would have a young but appearingly old satyr bard. I went with a very sun-damaged skin look. And because he's a bard, of course, he had to have bling, and he had to have a bright colored tunic. Once I'd finished blocking in all the color with the acrylics, I wanted to add a little bit more variation into the tree that the Bard was leaning up against. So I got out my oil brushers from Ammo, and I'm going to be using dark brown, earth, ochre, and buff to add some color variation to this tree. It's a really cool sculpt, and it has a lot of really interesting detail. And so I did this kind of like a dot filter. I grabbed the different oil paints and just put them in places where I wanted to come back and blend them later. Let them dry for a little bit, and then come in with some enamel odorless thinner and blend this in. I thought it would be fun to make him really suntanned. You know, a satyr bard that had been cursed with old age, that had spent way too long in the sun. And I was really happy with how this came out. I really like that, you know, there's more than one way to solve this problem of adding interesting color variation and depth. And while I prefer to do it with the airbrush, I love that you can do it with much more precision using the oil paints. Ranger's cloak just didn't have enough interesting variation to it for my liking. So I decided to go in with an oil brusher on this as well, using field green, yellow, and olive green, using the darker color at the bottom, and then working up to the yellow, and then using a little enamel odorless thinner to blend these colors together to try to create a more dynamic color variation from the bottom of the cloak to the top. I end up repeating this step a couple times to get the color where I want it. All right, next step is to come in with Ammo's Enamel Dark Wash. I liberally put this all over the Bard. I really wanted to show all of the detail in this tree and the tree roots and the Bard's suntan skin. It was begging for a deep, aggressive wash. And I really liked how this brought out the gold around the Bard's tunic. I'm going to be using Ammo's Wash for green vehicles on the Ranger. So my friend asked me to paint his miniatures, to paint his party. But I thought, yeah, I can do that, but if this is a D&D party, then they need a place to hang out while you're at your D&D night. So I found this base on Amazon that runs off of USB power. And the D&D nights that I've seen, most game masters worth their salt have power at the table for charging your phone and anything else that you need to do during the adventure. So I thought this would be perfect, that these guys could have a base that was USB powered, that they could have a spot to hang out in when they weren't in the dungeon crawl. So I grabbed one of these T-Light flame effect LEDs and disassembled it, and we're going to have the party around a campfire. Going to be using some offcuts of XPS foam for the base here that's going to sit on top of it. This will be where the campfire goes. And using some foam safe super glue to attach the foam to the base. Gave the base a coat of Mod Podge to seal it and get it ready for the next couple layers. While that was drying, I came back to the models and wanted to do some finishing touches. The Bard needed some edge highlighting on his tunic. I'm going to flock the bases, but I wanted to get them with a nice green and then paint the perimeter black. I still wasn't 100% happy with the Ranger's cloak, so I came in for one more oil brusher application to try to get the color where I wanted it. Avert your eyes from the ATST in the corner of the frame. That's for an upcoming video. Then I used Ammo's Ultra Glue to get some PVA glue on the base in preparation for flocking. Then I flocked these guys with basing material from Army Painter. Quick test of the circuit, hooked up to the wires coming through the base to make sure that's good to go. I'm going to be using Ammo's acrylic mud for vignettes as a base ground layer for the campfire scene. I had this leftover basswood from a previous project, and I thought, why not make it out of real wood? However, this is finished and square, and we need the campfire logs to be round. So I cut this with a hacksaw, and then grabbed my file and rounded the edges to make this look more like logs. This was surprisingly difficult to make it appear in scale, considering that the Mastif was a massive dog, and the Halfling is smaller than your standard human. Then I grabbed some Elmer's glue and the logs and arranged them like a campfire. Give everything a nice coat of Ammo's matte black. Since this is a lit fire, I wanted to try to replicate that effect and have some of the logs closer to the fire be charred, and then have the outside look more like wood. Going to be using burnt brown red from Ammo as the base wood layer for the outside, and then highlight that with Ammo's red leather. The final highlight is burnt cinnamon. Coincidentally, the same colors I used on the Mastif. Since we are out in the woods, I decided to go ahead and do a generous coat of Elmer's glue, and then come in with my static grass applicator and do a generous coat of static grass. Once the areas for the models were cut out, I used Secret Weapon Miniatures Heavy Body Black acrylic wash to unify the campfire and the groundwork. So then I grabbed my favorite flowers from Gamer's Grass and a couple leafy plants to decorate the scene. And as I finished the scene here, it seemed like a wet area. We had really vibrant flowers, lots of thick grass, and so it seemed like it made sense to have this campfire giving off more smoke than it normally would. So I took some cotton and fitted in here, number one, to knock down the brightness of the light, but number two, to give it that really wet, smoky feel. And here is the finished scene. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.